Hi everyone, so today's video is a top 5 Wednesday, and this whole month is basically a free, whatever your choice is, topic from past topics that you missed out on, and I have missed out on many of them because I'm pretty new to them, to top 5 Wednesdays, so I will link the Goodreads group down below, and the one that I chose for this week was non-written novels. And this mostly refers to graphic novels, manga, that sort of thing. Even though, it does have text in it, but it's mostly images. The first one that I wanted to mention is the Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Search series of comics. Most of these will be comics or graphic novels. And this one I just really like. I mean, of course, it's in top 5, but I especially like the fact that it's just really wraps up the series, I feel, because there were some kind of loose ends at the end of the series. Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is one of my favorites, if not my favorite series of all time. There were some things that weren't necessarily completely resolved by the end of that series, so these stories and the comic is really well written. I mean, the characters seem definitely like themselves, I would say. The story is really touching, and it just seems like a great thing to read after you've done with the series. Number 4 is Old Man Logan. I have read this more or less recently. I think it was last year, about maybe a couple weeks after I watched Logan. For the first time, of course, and that was my first ever introduction to the X-Men and to Logan himself. And I don't know, I mean, I understand that comic is really different from what the X-Men are in general, but I think that I'm one of those people who just is more into Wolverine than they are into the X-Men. I know that that's kind of a common thing, and I've definitely seen like X-Men fans complain about the fact that, not necessarily but seriously complain, but more jokingly complain about the fact that Logan is constantly in every single X-Men media, even though he doesn't quite seem to fit there, and the stories just always seem to center around him, no matter what, and he just seems to be the most used character when it comes to the X-Men, even though there's other ones, which I understand, but honestly, I don't know. I mean, since I was introduced through Logan and that movie is amazing, I just have more of an attachment to him. It just kind of depends on how, I guess, you were introduced to the X-Men, I don't know, but I do like them all. It's just that I find his character really interesting. In Old Man Logan, he is, this whole deconstruction idea is really taken to the extreme. It's what I think it is the comic that the movie is based on, so it's pretty dark and it just gets really grim and not necessarily hopeless. I think that's really what saves it, the fact that it does not really lose hope completely, but it's still a really intense story. Number 3 is Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, and I read this for the first time, and really for the last time, a pretty long time ago. I think I was at my last year of elementary school, and it's pretty harsh. I mean, now that I look back at it, it's extremely violent for a child, but I don't know, there was something about me that was just really curious about it. I don't think that it really shocked me, but who knows. I mean, I don't think I'm the best judge to tell you whether it's fine to read this when you're like super young or something, because I only have my own experience, and clearly this has shaped me in some way. Basically every book that you read will shape you in some way, I think, but it is really graphic in terms of violence. This is from John Vasquez, the guy who created Invader Sim, and it is much gorier than Invader Sim. Invader Sim is kind of dark, but this is just ridiculous. I mean, it's almost like comical levels of violence and blood. I mean, it's black and white, so the blood itself is not it's not red or anything. I mean, I don't think that really, but that's the thing, that doesn't really detract from how graphic it is. the and the way that the characters are drawn and made is really interesting. They just all seem really well-rounded characters, and I don't remember much of the story, to be honest with you, but it was really, I remember it being kind of touching in a way, and you really do care about the main character, even though he's kind of a homicidal maniac. And again, he's a pretty deep character. I mean, he has a lot of depth, and he's just really interesting to read about. So this is definitely a story that I would recommend if you think that you're kind of fine with like extreme levels of gore and violence, even though again, this is more of a comical kind of take on violence, but it's more satirical. I mean, it's very dark humored, but it's definitely harsh to read. I won't say it makes it any easier just because it's meant in a humorous way. And number two is one that I mentioned before, but I have mentioned the novel version of this. This is All You Need Is Kill 1 and 2. I'm pretty sure in 1 it's quite big, so I'm pretty sure it's 1 and 2. This is based on a light novel which has the same name by Hiroshi Sakurasaka. I mentioned that novel before on this channel, and it's one of my favorite ones. And it's a pretty light read for being military science fiction, which I guess some people think that is necessarily really heavy and kind of dense, and this is not dense. But essentially, this is about a kid a young man, really, a young Japanese man who is fighting against these sort of aliens that are starting to invade Japan. And they're called mimics or something like that. And they're basically, he dies and then he comes back to life on the same day. So basically, he repeats the same day over and over. And it's a pretty interesting read because he's trying to both find out what's going on with him repeating time, and he's also trying to fight these mimics. And there's a lot going on in this story, but it does not feel that heavy to read, I would say, especially in this format. So I would definitely recommend this. So number one is Watchmen. I have sure as hell recommended this one before, probably 3 times already. I mention this every time I am able to mention it. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and it is about, I mean, it's a little hard to explain. It's about this guy whose friend gets murdered at the beginning of the story, so it's really not a spoiler. His friend gets killed, and he thinks that there's something beyond his killing, that there's something bigger going on, and basically people don't really believe him, but he's convinced of it. The thing is, some people have found his character to be kind of unlikable, and also his friend is very, very unlikable. I mentioned that before. He's kind of a hard character to like. Even I wouldn't say that I like him. I wouldn't say he's the kind of character that I would like if I were to meet someone just like him in real life. But the thing is that he's still an interesting character to read about. It feels so real, and he's just really flawed, and that's something that makes the story more interesting. And I would say, and of course there's other characters. The thing, though, I've said this before, I think that the reason why his unlikableness is pulled off so well is because there's other characters that ground this character. There's other characters that tell him, or in some way show his flaws and tell you that you're not supposed to think that this character is great or perfect, or you're supposed to think of him as a role model or anything like that. It's almost like the author is trying to tell you that he is aware that this character is very flawed. So that's something that really stands out from this book. It just has a lot of depth. It has a lot of things to talk about, to take from this book. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like these books, if you're interested in reading them, definitely tell me about it in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!